My name is William, and tonight we enter the Tang Palace, at the moment when the most brilliant court in Asia began to mistake private tenderness for safety. Emperor Xuanzong had ruled through music, ceremony, and dazzling order. Yet one woman, Yang Guifei, became so closely bound to his heart that the court around them learned to whisper a terrible question. What happens when an emperor loves so deeply that the empire begins to feel neglected? It was not safe. It was not small. It was a wound. At first, this was not a story of collapse. It was a story of splendor. The Tang court glittered with silk sleeves, jade ornaments, and copied poems. Chang'an was the heart of a world that seemed almost too confident to fail. Envoys crossed its avenues, musicians filled its halls, officials bowed beneath carved roofs while the throne stood above them like the center of the sky. Xuanzong was not born as a foolish ruler, that matters. Earlier in his reign, he was known for discipline, reform, and a serious eye for talent. He understood government, ritual, and the weight of imperial duty. The tragedy is not that a weak man loved. It is that a strong ruler, after years of achievement, sought refuge from power in a private world softer than the court he had built. Then came Yang Guifei. Accounts remember her as graceful, warm, gifted in music, and hard for the palace to ignore. Her rise was delicate and dangerous. Some traditions say she first stood within the royal family before reaching the emperor's side. Because of that, her presence carried more than charm. It carried unease. In a court ruled by rank, even affection had a past. Picture the palace at dusk. Lamps glow against lacquered pillars. A screen trembles in the evening air. Outside, winter pools in the courtyards, while inside the sound of strings floats through warmth. Xuanzong listens, not as an emperor judging performance, but as a man hearing a voice that eases him. Yang Guifei does not need speeches to hold power. Her power begins with attention. The full story behind this might surprise you, because what shocked the court was not only their closeness, it was what gathered around it. A favorite rarely rises alone. Relatives rise with her. Servants become important. Old families feel displaced. New factions learn where to stand. The emperor's private joy becomes a map of ambition for everyone watching. Yang Guifei's family began to matter in ways that could not be ignored. Most famous was Yang Guifei, whose influence became deeply resented. Whether every charge was fair is hard to know, because courts often turn rivals into monsters. But the impression was deadly. To many officials, the emperor seemed to be drifting into comfort, while the Yang family stood too close to state power. And here is the intriguing part most people miss. Yang Guifei herself does not need to be a villain for the damage to become real. History is often cruel in that way. A woman can be loved, admired, and blamed for forces far larger than herself. A court can place anger on one face rather than admit the system is failing. Still, the symbols were powerful. Later stories speak of fresh lychees carried at speed for her delight, of palace music, and of the hot springs at Lishan, where royal ease floated above the harsher world beyond the gates. Some details may have grown in the telling, but the image survived because it captured a truth. The court believed the center was becoming too soft. That is why the silence around it matters, and no one forgot it. Outside that softness, danger was gathering. The empire was vast, and frontier commanders held enormous military power. Among them stood An Lushan, a general whose charm, ambition, and access to the court made him impossible to dismiss. He understood performance. He understood favour. He also understood that royal attention could lead to immense strength. For a time, An Lushan moved through the court with theatrical confidence. He played the loyal servant. He entertained. He bowed. He presented himself as useful, even endearing. Some accounts place him near Yang Guifei through courtly rituals of favour, though we must be careful with hostile tales. What matters is the political effect. The court saw dangerous men drawing near a distracted emperor. Could Xuanzong still have stopped what was coming? That is the painful question. Empires rarely fall from one cause. There were military pressures, weak rule, rivalries, and old resentments. Yet his emotional retreat made every danger worse. When a ruler's attention narrows, ambitious men learn to widen their own power. Then the storm broke, and Lushan turned against the dynasty, and Tang confidence cracked open. The rebellion was not a private quarrel dressed as war. It was a vast political and military disaster. But in the memory of the court, the path to disaster ran through the palace rooms where trust had been misplaced and warning softened by comfort. Suddenly the luxuries of the court looked different. The silk no longer seemed harmless. The music no longer sounded innocent. The favorite no longer appeared as merely beloved. In crisis, people searched for someone to accuse, and the Yang family became the answer many soldiers and officials could bear to name. The emperor fled the capital with Yang Guifei and his court. Imagine that road, the dust of departure, the clatter of horses, palace women leaving behind painted chambers, officials carrying documents that could not save them. The emperor, once imagined as immovable, was moving under pressure, away from the city that had proclaimed his glory. At Mawei, the tragedy reached its most intimate form. The guards, enraged and afraid, demanded the death of Yang Guizhong. Then their anger turned toward Yang Guifei herself. They believed that while she lived, the old poison at court remained. Accounts differ in detail, but the pattern is clear. The emperor was forced into a choice no lover or ruler could survive unchanged. This is the moment that makes the story painful. Xuanzong was the son of heaven, yet he could not protect the woman he loved. Power, which had once made their closeness possible, now demanded her removal. The same courtly world that had wrapped her in silk delivered her to sacrifice. Public duty did not defeat private devotion. With dignity, it crushed it in the dust of flight. After Yang Guifei's death, the emperor continued, but his center had broken. The rebellion did not vanish. The dynasty survived, yet it was never the same. Tang authority was scarred. Local power grew harder to control. The old radiance remained in poetry and memory, but politically the golden age had been severed. Yet the truth is even more astonishing. Yang Guifei became more than a court figure. She became an image of beauty, blame, longing, and old sorrow. Poets returned to her because her story held a wound larger than one romance. Was she the cause of ruin, or the most visible victim of a court already losing its balance? The answer depends on how kindly we read the past. A lesser telling makes her dangerous and the emperor a fool. A better telling sees something more human. Xuanzong had carried the empire for decades. Yang Guifei offered him warmth, music, and the illusion of peace. But an emperor cannot withdraw into tenderness without leaving space for danger. That is the cruel difference between private love and imperial love. One may heal a man, the other may expose a realm. The tragedy of Xuanzong and Yang Guifei is not that devotion existed inside the palace. It is that devotion became inseparable from rank, favoritism, family ambition, and military fear. Once love entered this machinery, it no longer belonged only to two people. It belonged to ministers, generals, soldiers, poets, and enemies waiting for a weakness to name. So what shattered the Tang court? Not love alone, not one woman alone, not even one emperor's grief alone. It was the fatal collision between refuge and royal duty. It was a court that turned affection into faction, and a ruler who forgot for too long that beauty cannot shield a throne from consequence. If this story made you see the Tang court differently, tell me what you think below. Was Yang Guifei truly responsible, or was she made to carry the blame for a failing world around her? If you found this journey moving, leave a like, and join me again for more hidden stories of power, heartbreak, and high society scandal. History often hides its deepest sorrows, where devotion was real, but duty was stronger.